Tamika Jones stood frozen in Precision Motors' gleaming showroom, 20 pairs of eyes boring into her grease-stained coveralls as CEO Lennox Kensington's laughter cut through the air. You think you can fix what my Swiss engineers couldn't solve in 6 weeks? You have exactly 90 seconds. The luxury car dealership's quarterly staff meeting had transformed into an impromptu spectacle, with Tamika, called in for a simple oil change, now center stage before executives in tailored suits. The prototype McLaren P2 with its unfixable cooling system sat between them, its matte black exterior reflecting the showroom's harsh lights. Whispers rippled through the crowd as marketing director Eleanor Marsh tapped her watch, the $85,000 timepiece catching the light as she announced, "The clock starts now." Tamika's fingers twitched at her side. This wasn't just about a car anymore. This was about her shop's survival. With Rising Star Mechanics 3 months behind on rent and facing eviction in exactly 17 days, she needed the reputation boost this high-end client could provide. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. They'll never let you win their game playing by their rules. MIT engineering dropout Tamika built Rising Star Mechanics after facing academic discrimination. Her grandmother Eloise raised her after her parents' accident, teaching her that knowledge is the one thing they can't take from you. Her grandfather Solomon's titanium wrench, cool to touch with a distinctive ping when tapped, became her diagnostic trademark. Every machine sings its own song, he'd taught her. Despite her talent for fixing unfixable problems, corporate competition pushed her shop to the brink. 3 months behind on rent with 17 days until eviction, she'd already laid off Marco, her only full-time employee. Lennox Kensington had previously dismissed her at an auto expo, directing her to consumer information, despite her presenter credentials. Now in his territory, with her grandfather's wrench in her pocket and the clock ticking, Tamika prepared to face the challenge that could save or destroy everything she'd built. "I just came to fix an oil leak," Tamika said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Nobody mentioned a cooling system problem." Kensington's smile widened as he circled the McLaren P2. "Yet here you are, claiming expertise. Our receptionist mentioned you insisted on being the one to service our vehicles. Something about specialized knowledge." Tamika bit back a correction. She'd said no such thing, but the trap was already sprung. "This prototype," Kensington continued, resting a manicured hand on the carbon fiber hood, "represents a $4.3 million investment. Its cooling system has stumped our engineering team for 6 weeks. We've had to postpone the launch event, costing us market advantage." He straightened his Italian silk tie. "But perhaps what we need is—" He paused, eyes raking over her coveralls. "A fresh perspective." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Only now did Tamika notice the journalists in the corner, tablets and cameras ready. This wasn't just a staff meeting. It was a media event. "Here's my proposal," Kensington announced. "Fix our impossible engine problem in 90 seconds, and Precision Motors will contract Rising Star Mechanics for all our routine maintenance. A guaranteed $250,000 annual contract." The room fell silent. Tamika's heart hammered against her ribs. "And if I can't?" she asked. "Then you publicly acknowledge that some technical challenges require properly credentialed professionals. And you cover the cost of today's wasted time. Let's say $5,000. $5,000 she didn't have, but a $250,000 contract would save her shop. The problem," Kensington continued, "is an intermittent cooling system failure that occurs only after the engine reaches optimal temperature." Eleanor Marsh stepped forward, her stiletto heels clicking against the polished floor. "For transparency," she added with feigned helpfulness, "we've documented every test performed." She handed Tamika a tablet displaying a spreadsheet of diagnostic attempts. "Tick-tock," Kensington interrupted. "Your 90-second window started when Ms. Marsh activated her timer. You now have 73 seconds remaining." Tamika stepped toward the vehicle, aware of every eye tracking her movement. As her hands hovered over the engine, a question burned in her mind with increasing urgency. Would the next minute and a half destroy her reputation or change her life forever? Tamika's hands moved with practiced efficiency as she scanned the engine compartment. The McLaren P2 was a masterpiece of engineering, a hybrid powerhouse with a revolutionary cooling system. 60 seconds, Eleanor announced, her voice carrying an undercurrent of satisfaction. Tamika identified the primary cooling circuit, tracing coolant pathways with her fingertips. Something wasn't right. "These tests," she said, pointing to the tablet, "they're all focused on component failure. Has anyone checked for systemic integration issues?" A murmur rippled through the executives. Kensington's smile tightened. "Our engineers consider every variable," he replied smoothly. "Perhaps stick to what you can see rather than questioning our methodology." 50 seconds. Tamika connected a sensor to the engine control unit. Normal. She triggered the diagnostic mode, scanning for error codes. Nothing definitive. "Your engineers replaced the thermostat 3 times," she noted, "but only tested the bypass valve in combination with other components." Her fingers found the valve, a sophisticated component that should redirect coolant when temperatures exceeded parameters. 40 seconds. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she traced the connections. The valve was properly installed according to specifications, but those specifications— "Wait," she muttered, pulling up the parts manifest. "This is a Mark IV bypass valve, but your coolant reservoir is configured for—" 35 seconds, Eleanor cut in, louder this time. "Perhaps you should be doing rather than talking." The audience chuckled. A camera flashed. Tamika blocked them out. The valve and reservoir were technically compatible, both top-of-the-line components, but their combination created a pressure differential that wouldn't manifest during standard testing. "I need to check something," she said, reaching for the coolant reservoir cap. "Very careful with that," Kensington warned. "That cap alone costs more than most of the repairs you perform." 25 seconds. Tamika carefully removed the cap, confirming her suspicion. The threading was immaculate. Too immaculate. Factory perfect, without the microscopic wear patterns that would appear after weeks of testing. "This reservoir has been replaced recently," she said. Kensington shrugged. "Naturally, we've replaced every component. But not in the order listed here." Tamika tapped the tablet. "According to your documentation, the last reservoir replacement was 3 weeks ago, but this one is new." A flash of something. Concern crossed Kensington's face before his smug expression returned. "We conduct ongoing tests. The paperwork isn't always updated immediately." 15 seconds, Eleanor announced, her voice carrying a hint of nervousness now. Tamika had identified part of the problem, the mismatched pressure dynamics, but that alone wouldn't cause the failures they were experiencing. There had to be something else. She ran her hand along the coolant lines, feeling for irregularities. Her fingers paused on a junction where the main coolant line connected to the heat exchanger. There, almost imperceptible, was a slight deformation in the metal fitting. 10 seconds. "I think I've found part of the problem," Tamika announced, pointing to the junction. "This fitting is slightly deformed. When the engine heats up and the coolant system pressurizes, it creates a micro-leak that compounds with the pressure differential between the valve and the new reservoir." 5 seconds, Eleanor interrupted. "Sounds like guesswork to me." "It's not guesswork," Tamika insisted. "I can prove it if I can just—" "Time's up," Kensington announced with theatrical finality, stepping between Tamika and the engine. "A valiant effort, but as expected, the problem remains unsolved." The executives began to applaud politely, as if acknowledging an amusing intermission. "Not so fast," Tamika said. "I've identified the primary issues. I just need a few more minutes to demonstrate the fix." Kensington's smile became predatory. "Our agreement was 90 seconds, not as long as you need. Besides, identifying potential problems isn't the same as fixing them." He turned to the audience, spreading his hands in a gesture of magnanimous regret. "I believe we've been more than fair. However, To demonstrate Precision Motors' commitment to community engagement, I'll waive the $5,000 penalty. The condescension in his voice made the gesture more insulting than generous. But I'm not finished, Tamika protested. I found something your engineers missed. And yet, Kensington cut her off, the engine remains unfixed, which brings us to an important lesson about the difference between amateur enthusiasm and professional expertise. He gestured toward the door. Thank you for participating in today's demonstration. My assistant will see you out. Your test conditions are flawed, she said clearly, making sure her voice carried to the journalists. The components have been changed without proper documentation, and there's evidence of security, Kensington called smoothly. Please escort Ms. Jones from the premises. Two men in dark suits moved toward Tamika. This was spiraling out of control. If she left now, not only would she lose the contract, but the public humiliation would devastate what little professional reputation she had left. Her hand closed around her grandfather's wrench in her pocket. There had to be another way. Wait, called a voice from the back of the showroom. I'd like to see this play out. The security guards paused as a woman stepped forward from the journalists. She wore a tailored pantsuit with a press badge that identified her as Vanessa Washington, technology editor for Auto Innovation Quarterly. Mr. Kensington, Washington continued, your challenge specified fixing the problem, not merely identifying it. Surely demonstration of the actual repair is the true test. Kensington's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. The parameters were clear, 90 seconds. Then change the parameters, Washington countered. Your quarterly results come out next week, and I'm writing a feature on innovation leadership. I'd be fascinated to see how Precision Motors handles unexpected solutions. Kensington's jaw tightened before he relaxed into a practiced smile. Always in the pursuit of transparency. Very well, Ms. Jones may have an additional 2 minutes, but only under supervision. He gestured to a man in an impeccable gray suit. Dr. Reeves, our Director of Engineering, will oversee the process. Dr. Reeves stepped forward, his expression a mixture of annoyance and professional curiosity. You believe the issue is with the coolant junction and pressure differential? He asked Tamika, his tone suggesting he was humoring a child. That's part of it, Tamika replied, but there's something else, something deliberate. The room went silent. Excuse me? Kensington's voice had lost its smooth veneer. This engine has been tampered with, Tamika said clearly. The coolant fitting didn't deform through normal wear. It's been manually altered, slightly, but enough to ensure failure under specific conditions. Dr. Reeves frowned, leaning closer to examine the fitting. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation. It's an observation, Tamika replied. And it's not the only irregularity. The electronic control unit has been modified too. She pointed to the ECU, the engine's central computer. The casing has been opened and resealed. There's a slight misalignment in the housing. Our technicians regularly update the software, Dr. Reeves countered. Without documenting it? Tamika challenged. Murmurs swept through the crowd. The journalists were recording everything. Kensington stepped closer, lowering his voice. You are walking a very dangerous line, Ms. Jones. Accusations of sabotage could be considered defamatory. Tamika felt a momentary flash of doubt. Was she risking everything on a hunch? Her grandmother's voice came back to her. When they try to make you doubt yourself, that's when you know you're onto something. I'm not accusing anyone, she said loudly. I'm diagnosing a vehicle, and this vehicle has been deliberately set up to fail. Dr. Reeves cleared his throat. The fitting does appear to have been altered. Kensington's face flushed with anger. This is absurd. 1 minute remaining, Eleanor announced, her voice slightly shaky. Tamika needed to focus. The coolant junction could be addressed quickly, but the ECU modifications would require specialized equipment she didn't have access to here. Unless... Her hand closed around Solomon's wrench. Her grandfather had modified it with a unique feature, a precision edge that could be used as a makeshift screwdriver in emergencies. I need to reset the ECU and adjust that fitting, she told Dr. Reeves. Can you confirm the ECU access code? The engineer hesitated, looking at Kensington, who gave a curt nod. Alpha Zulu 959 Echo 3, Dr. Reeves provided. Tamika worked with methodical precision, using her grandfather's wrench to carefully straighten the deformed fitting while Dr. Reeves entered the access code. The coolant line now formed a proper seal, but the ECU still contained whatever modifications had been made. 30 seconds, Eleanor called out. Tamika connected the diagnostic tablet to the ECU port and ran a scan. There, buried in the thermal management subroutines, was a line of code that didn't belong. A trigger that would activate only when specific conditions were met, forcing the cooling system to exceed safety parameters. There's malicious code in the thermal management system, she announced, turning the tablet so Dr. Reeves could see. It's designed to override safety protocols once operating temperature is reached. The engineer's expression shifted from skepticism to shock. This shouldn't be here. Can you remove it? Tamika asked urgently. Yes, but we'd need to— 10 seconds! Eleanor's voice was almost frantic now. Force reboot the ECU to factory settings, Tamika instructed. It will wipe the malicious code. But we'll lose all the calibration data, Dr. Reeves protested. 5 seconds. Better than a sabotaged engine, Tamika countered. Do it now. Dr. Reeves hesitated, then executed the command. Time's up, Eleanor announced. The McLaren's systems went dark as the ECU reset itself. Then the dashboard lights flickered back to life as the computer rebooted. The reset worked, Dr. Reeves confirmed. The malicious code is gone, but we've lost all the custom calibration. That doesn't qualify as fixed, Kensington declared. A reset that degrades performance is hardly a solution. I'm not finished, Tamika insisted. The physical repair is complete. I just need to recalibrate the system. The time has expired, Kensington repeated firmly. Vanessa Washington stepped forward again. I find it interesting that you're less concerned about apparent sabotage than about enforcing arbitrary time limits. As the security guards moved to escort her out, Tamika noticed something on the tablet screen, a digital signature embedded in the malicious code fragment. LK Test 17. Lennox Kensington. Test 17. The realization hit her like a physical blow. This wasn't just sabotage. It was a test. Kensington had been testing his own engineers, and now he was testing her. Before I leave, she announced loudly, I'd like Ms. Washington and her colleagues to see something interesting in the code signature. All eyes turned to Tamika as she stood her ground, the diagnostic tablet still in her hand. There's nothing more to see here, Kensington said. The challenge is over. Is it? Tamika challenged. Because I haven't shown everyone my specialty yet. Without waiting for permission, she pulled her grandfather's titanium socket wrench from her pocket. The polished metal caught the showroom lights, drawing attention. What are you going to do? Dr. Reeves asked. Hit something? I'm going to listen, Tamika replied. She stepped to the McLaren's engine, now running at idle after the reset. Closing her eyes, she placed the titanium wrench against various points of the engine block, pressing its handle to her ear like a doctor with a stethoscope. The showroom fell silent, except for the engine's purr and the soft ping of metal against metal as she moved the wrench methodically. Eleanor Marsh laughed nervously. What is this? Some kind of mechanical seance? Tamika ignored her, concentrating intently on the subtle vibrations and acoustic signatures transmitting through the wrench. Her grandfather had taught her this technique, how every engine had a unique sound profile, how the tiniest imperfections created distinctive patterns that told stories conventional diagnostics might miss. There, she murmured after 30 seconds. Third cylinder. Intake valve. She opened her eyes to find everyone staring at her. The third cylinder intake valve has a microfracture, she explained, pointing to a section of the engine hidden beneath components. It wouldn't show up on standard diagnostics because it only opens under specific load conditions. Combined with the coolant system tampering, it creates a perfect storm, enough to cause catastrophic failure, but only after running flawlessly through basic tests. Dr. Reeves frowned. That's impossible to diagnose without disassembly. Not impossible, Tamika corrected. Just requires a different approach. She held up the wrench. This tool transmits vibrations with perfect fidelity. The third cylinder makes a distinctive harmonic pattern at idle, lower than the others with a subtle resonance peak that indicates metal fatigue. The engineer's skepticism gave way to reluctant curiosity. That's not standard procedure. No, it's better, Tamika replied. It's faster and non-invasive. She turned to Kensington, whose face had gone rigid with tension. And it immediately reveals that this engine has been deliberately compromised in multiple ways that conventional testing wouldn't catch. She held up the tablet, turning it so the journalists could see the screen. Including this code signature that connects the sabotage directly to... That's quite enough, Kensington snapped, signaling the security guards. Remove her now. But before they could reach her, Vanessa Washington stepped between them, joined by two other journalists. I'm very interested in seeing that tablet, Ms. Jones, she said loudly. The security guards hesitated, caught between Kensington's authority and the risk of manhandling reporters on camera. The code signature reads LK Test 17, Tamika announced, her voice carrying across the showroom. As in Lennox Kensington, Test 17. A stunned silence fell over the room. All eyes turned to Kensington, whose face had drained of color. Dr. Reeves stepped forward, taking the tablet from Tamika's hand. His eyes widened as he verified the signature. She's right, he said, his voice a mixture of shock and betrayal. This is your personal testing protocol, Lennox, the same one you used when you were evaluating the engineering team last quarter. Kensington's composure cracked. This is proprietary internal testing methodology, not for public discussion. You mean it's how you test your engineers' loyalty, Tamika corrected. By sabotaging projects and seeing who speaks up versus who stays silent. Doctor, Reeves was scrolling through the code, his expression darkening. There are 16 other instances documented here, each with progressive difficulty. He looked up at Kensington. You've been systematically sabotaging our work to test us? The murmuring among the executives grew louder. Eleanor Marsh stepped away from Kensington, distancing herself as she sensed the shifting dynamics. It's a standard industry practice, Kensington insisted, though his confident demeanor had evaporated. Quality control through adversarial testing. There's nothing standard about deliberately creating failure points without the knowledge of your team, Vanessa Washington countered, already typing notes into her phone. Dr. Reeves turned to Tamika with newfound respect. How did you know to check for this? Because I was listening for the whole story, not just the parts I was told to hear, Tamika replied, hefting her grandfather's wrench. My grandfather showed me that machines communicate their problems if you pay attention to all the signals, not just the obvious ones. She stepped back to the McLaren, placing the wrench against the engine block once more. Listen, she invited Dr. Reeves. The engineer hesitantly mimicked her actions, pressing his ear to the wrench handle. His eyes widened. I can hear it, he confirmed, amazement breaking through his reserve. A distinct difference in the third cylinder. He straightened, turning to the gathered executives and journalists. She's correct about the microfracture. I can verify it. And I can fix it, Tamika added confidently. Along with properly recalibrating the system. Kensington attempted to regain control. This demonstration has concluded. Dr. Reeves, secure the prototype. Nobody moved. I'd like to see Mrs. Jones complete the repair, Vanessa Washington said, her statement clearly a challenge, since she's identified problems your entire engineering team missed. Dr. Reeves made a decision that visibly surprised Kensington. I concur. Ms. Jones has demonstrated exceptional abilities. I'd like to observe her complete the repair process. Eleanor Marsh quickly aligned herself with the prevailing sentiment. Precision Motors has always valued innovation and talent, regardless of its source. she announced smoothly. Perhaps we should view this as an opportunity. Cornered, Kensington forced a tight smile. By all means. Ms. Jones may proceed, under supervision, of course. Tamika didn't wait for further permission. With the wrench still in hand, she set to work, explaining each step. First, she completed the coolant system repair. Then, with Dr. Reeves's assistance, she extracted the flawed intake valve and demonstrated the microfracture to the captivated audience. The fracture pattern indicates deliberate stress, she explained, showing the valve to the journalists. This wasn't fatigue or manufacturing defect. It was created intentionally. As Kensington watched his carefully constructed scenario unravel, Tamika reconstructed the engine, her hands moving with the confidence of someone who had found her element. Within 20 minutes, the McLaren's engine was reassembled and functioning flawlessly. Start it up, she told Dr. Reeves. The engine roared to life, its sound now perfectly balanced. The diagnostic tablet displayed optimal performance metrics across every system. Take it to operating temperature, Tamika instructed. Dr. Reeves did so, monitoring the readings carefully. The cooling system performed flawlessly. It's fixed, he confirmed, unable to hide his admiration. Completely fixed. The crowd erupted in applause, genuine appreciation for skill demonstrated under pressure. Tamika looked directly at Kensington, whose face was now a mask of barely controlled fury beneath a veneer of corporate composure. I believe we had an agreement, she said. A $250,000 annual maintenance contract. You've certainly demonstrated creativity, Kensington acknowledged, his voice tight. However, our agreement specified fixing the problem within 90 seconds. You required significantly more time, which invalidates our original terms. The momentary triumph Tamika had felt began to fade. Of course, he would find a way to wriggle out of the deal. That's not what happened, she countered. I identified the problems within the time limit. The only reason I needed longer was because of your security intervention and the extent of the deliberate sabotage. Kensington's smile returned, cold and calculated. Nevertheless, contracts are about precise terms. I'm afraid Precision Motors cannot enter into an agreement based on modified conditions. Dr. Reeves looked uncomfortable but remained silent. The executives began to nod in agreement with their CEO. You're backing out because I exposed your testing program, Tamika said flatly. I'm adhering to our original agreement, Kensington corrected. Though in recognition of your unusual methods, I'm prepared to offer you a one-time consultation fee of $2,000 for today's demonstration. $2,000. A pittance compared to the contract that would have saved her shop, barely enough to cover 1 month's rent. Eleanor Marsh stepped forward, tablet in hand. I've prepared the standard NDA and consultation invoice. If you'll just sign here, we can process your payment immediately. The subtext was clear. Take the money and keep quiet about what you've seen. Tamika thought about Rising Star Mechanics, the leaking roof she couldn't afford to fix, Marco waiting for her call telling him he could return to work. 17 days until eviction. $2,000 wouldn't save her shop, but it would buy her a little time. Then she thought about the implications of signing that NDA. Kensington's testing program wasn't just ethically questionable, it was potentially dangerous. No, she said finally. I won't sign an NDA covering up potentially hazardous practices. Kensington's expression hardened. Then I'm afraid we have nothing further to discuss. Security will escort you out. This time the guards moved with purpose, flanking Tamika and gesturing toward the exit. You can't just brush this under the rug, Tamika protested, looking to the journalists for support. But they were being herded to a separate area by Precision's PR team, offered exclusive interviews with Kensington to clarify today's demonstration. Dr. Reeves caught her eye briefly before turning away, his expression apologetic but unwilling to risk his position. The McLaren, now perfectly functional thanks to her, was being wheeled into a restricted area. As the security guards led her toward the exit, Kensington stepped close one last time. "You know," he said quietly, "you could have had a place here if you'd played along. Talent like yours is rare, even if it comes in unconventional packaging." "I'd never work for someone who sabotages their own team to test their loyalty," Tamika replied. Kensington shrugged. "Your loss. By this time tomorrow, today's little drama will be forgotten. The McLaren will launch on schedule, our stock will rise, and you'll still be changing oil in that neighborhood shop of yours." He checked his watch. "At least until your eviction next month." As she trudged toward her pickup in the far corner of the lot, she saw Vanessa Washington hurrying toward her. "Ms. Jones? Wait!" A flicker of hope rose in Tamika's chest. "That was incredible in there," Washington said. "The way you diagnosed the engine, I've never seen anything like it." "Thanks," Tamika replied, "but it doesn't matter now. Kensington's going to bury it all." Washington's expression shifted, becoming apologetic. "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. Precision Motors is one of our biggest advertisers. My editor just called. We can't run anything about the code signature or the intentional tampering without concrete proof, which disappeared back into that building." The last ember of hope extinguished. Of course. Money always protected money. As Washington took down her contact information, Tamika's phone buzzed with a text message from her part-timer named Darius. "Inspector came by again. Says we need 8K and fire code upgrades by next week or he's shutting us down." Another impossible hurdle. "I have to go," she told Washington, pocketing her phone. Tamika climbed into her truck, placing her grandfather's wrench on the passenger seat, its titanium surface reflecting the afternoon light. For the first time, the tool felt like a hollow reminder rather than a source of strength. As she pulled out of the parking lot, she caught a glimpse of Kensington through the showroom windows, smiling confidently as he addressed the gathered media. 17 days until eviction. 1 week until the fire inspector's deadline. No contract, no windfall, no justice. What would it take for skill and integrity to matter more than power and privilege? Tamika drove aimlessly, the afternoon sun slanting through her windshield. She should head back to the shop. There were still customers waiting, but the weight of impending failure made it hard to focus. Her phone buzzed. Darius. "Where you at? Mr. Patterson waiting on his Camry." As she approached the industrial district where her shop stood, a black Mercedes SUV pulled alongside her at a stoplight. The passenger window slid down. "Ms. Jones?" The driver was a middle-aged woman in a crisp suit. "I need a word. Please pull over at the next block." Tamika followed the Mercedes into an empty parking lot and cut her engine. The woman emerged with purposeful strides, offering a business card. "Catherine Voss, Chief Operations Officer, Horizon Automotive Group." Tamika recognized the name immediately. Horizon was Precision Motors' largest competitor. "How did you find me?" Tamika asked. Voss smiled slightly. "Ms. Washington isn't the only journalist with a phone. And unlike her publication, mine doesn't depend on Precision Motors' advertising dollars." She gestured to Tamika's truck. "May I?" Tamika nodded and Voss slipped into the passenger seat, immediately noticing the titanium wrench. "That's an unusual tool," she observed. "It was my grandfather's," Tamika replied. Voss nodded. "I was in the showroom today, not as a guest. Horizon has people who attend Precision's public events. Corporate intelligence, you might call it." "You saw what happened?" "Every moment, including what followed after you left." Voss removed her sunglasses. "Kensington is in damage control mode. He's offering exclusive access to journalists in exchange for their discretion." "And your people?" "We're recording everything, including the tablet screen showing Kensington's signature on the sabotage code." Tamika sat up straighter. "You have proof?" "Better than proof, we have the entire diagnostic log. One of our people posed as IT support during the confusion and copied all the data." Voss's smile turned predatory. "Kensington's testing program includes documented sabotage of 17 different vehicles, Some already sold to customers. That's criminal negligence. Precisely. Which brings me to why I'm here. Voss turned to face Tamika directly. Horizon Automotive Group would like to retain your services. For what exactly? Initially as an expert witness. We're filing a formal complaint with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration regarding Precision's practices. Tamika processed this. Taking down Kensington would be satisfying, but it wouldn't save her shop. And after that? We're establishing an advanced diagnostic division focused on next-generation systems. We need someone who thinks unconventionally. Voss glanced at the titanium wrench. Someone who understands that machines communicate in ways standard procedures might miss. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a division, with a starting budget of $3 million and a team of 20 engineers, plus immediate compensation for your expert testimony, let's say $50,000 as an initial retainer. The figure hit Tamika like a physical force. $50,000 would clear her debts, fund the fire code upgrades, and still leave operating capital. But a corporate position meant leaving Rising Star behind. Voss seemed to read her hesitation. There's one more thing. Horizon has a community service initiative that provides subsidized maintenance for essential workers through local partner shops. We need a flagship location in South Atlanta. You want to partner with Rising Star? We want to invest in it. Fund your expansion, upgrade your equipment, hire additional staff. You would split your time between Horizon headquarters and your shop, which would remain independently owned but receive corporate support. It seemed too perfect. Why? Why go to all this trouble for one mechanic? Because what you did today was remarkable. You didn't just fix an engine. You revealed a fundamental flaw in how this industry approaches problems. Voss's expression became earnest. The old guard, like Kensington, sees expertise as something exclusive, defined by credentials, protected by hierarchies. But the future belongs to those who can actually solve problems, regardless of their background. She checked her watch. There's something else you should see before you decide. What's that? Kensington's press conference. It's starting in 15 minutes at Precision Motors. I think you'll find it illuminating. Tamika followed Voss's Mercedes back to Precision Motors, parking in the public lot across the street. They remained in Voss's vehicle, watching as a small stage had been erected for the press conference. What exactly are we waiting for? Tamika asked. Voss checked her phone. Confirmation that... here we go. She turned the screen toward Tamika, showing a text message. Package delivered. Link active in 3 minutes. On the stage, Lennox Kensington appeared, surrounded by his executive team. Camera flashes erupted as he approached the microphone, his confident smile firmly in place. The car's dashboard display lit up with a live feed of Kensington's microphone audio and a different camera angle than the press cameras. This one from inside the Precision Motors network. Ladies and gentlemen, Kensington began, thank you for joining us on this exciting day. Despite some unscheduled demonstrations earlier, I'm pleased to announce that the McLaren P2 cooling system has been fully optimized by our engineering team, and production will begin next week as scheduled. Mr. Kensington, called Vanessa Washington's voice, can you address the diagnostic techniques demonstrated by Tamika Jones this afternoon, the ones that identified problems your team had missed? Kensington's smile never wavered. Ms. Jones provided an interesting perspective, but I want to be clear. Our engineering team had already identified the issues and was implementing solutions as part of our standard iterative process. Tamika felt her blood pressure rising at the blatant lie. What about the evidence of intentional tampering with the engine systems? Another reporter called out. A complete misunderstanding, Kensington replied smoothly. What Ms. Jones observed were controlled testing parameters, standard in our industry. Nothing was tampered with. We simply create challenging conditions to ensure our systems can withstand extreme scenarios. Voss smiled thinly. He's good. I'll give him that. On stage, Kensington continued fielding questions, rewriting history in real time. The truth of what had happened was being erased. "He's going to get away with it," Tamika said quietly. "Is he?" Voss replied, checking her watch again. 3, 2, 1. On the dashboard display, a notification popped up on Kensington's personal tablet, which sat on the podium beside him. His eyes flicked to it briefly, then widened in alarm. "As I was saying," he continued, "safety is our absolute priority at Precision Motors. We would never compromise—" His tablet pinged again, more insistently. This time, several reporters' phones also chimed with notifications. Murmurs spread through the crowd as journalists glanced at their screens. "What did you do?" Tamika asked, watching Kensington's growing discomfort. "Not me," Voss replied. "An anonymous whistleblower just released Kensington's testing logs to every automotive journalist in that crowd, along with video of today's demonstration." On stage, Kensington was losing control as reporters began shouting new questions. "Mr. Kensington, can you explain why your personal code signature appears on documented engine sabotage? Is it standard practice at Precision to create intentional failure points without informing your engineering team? Has the NHTSA been notified about your testing methods on vehicles already sold to consumers?" Kensington's face had gone from confident to ashen. He leaned over to whisper urgently to Eleanor Marsh, who looked equally stricken. "I think," Voss said with satisfaction, "we're about to witness corporate karma in action." Kensington tapped the microphone. "I believe there's been a security breach with some internal testing documentation being taken out of context. We'll be concluding this press conference while we investigate. Thank you for your time." As he attempted to leave the stage, a final question rang out. "Mr. Kensington, Tamika Jones fixed your impossible engine in front of witnesses after identifying your sabotage. Do you stand by your decision to renege on your promised contract with her?" The question froze him mid-step. Camera flashes intensified as journalists sensed blood in the water. Kensington turned back to the microphone, his corporate mask cracking. "Ms. Jones performed an unauthorized diagnostic procedure that violated our protocols. The challenge parameters were clearly—" "The parameters," interrupted a new voice, "were to fix an impossible engine problem that had stumped your engineers for weeks, which she did, despite your interference." Dr. Reeves had stepped to the microphone. The director of engineering looked directly into the cameras. "I can confirm that Tamika Jones correctly identified and repaired multiple issues that our team had failed to resolve, including evidence of systematic tampering that appears to have been part of an unauthorized testing program." The crowd erupted. Kensington tried to pull Reeves away from the microphone, but the damage was done. Reporters shouted questions over each other as the PR team scrambled unsuccessfully to regain control. In the Mercedes, Tamika watched in astonishment as Kensington's carefully constructed narrative collapsed in real time. "Dr. Reeves just committed career suicide," she said. "Or ensured his place in the industry as a person of integrity," Voss countered. "Horizon has been trying to recruit him for years." On stage, Kensington was being led away by his security team, while Eleanor Marsh attempted to salvage the press conference. The damage control was too late. Live feeds were already broadcasting the story globally. Precision Motors stock was plummeting in after-hours trading, and the hashtag #ImpossibleEngine was trending. Tamika's phone buzzed with notifications, journalists requesting interviews, old customers expressing support, and a text from Darius. "Boss, you're all over Twitter. Shop phone blowing up with new appointments." She turned to Voss, who was watching her with an expectant expression. "So, about that offer?" Tamika looked down at her grandfather's titanium wrench, running her fingers along its smooth surface. When she lifted it, the metal caught the late afternoon sun, transforming it from a simple tool to something almost luminous. She tapped it lightly against the truck's dashboard, listening to the distinctive ping that had guided her through countless repairs. "I need to counteroffer," Tamika said finally. "I want Rising Star to remain independent, but I'm open to a partnership with Horizon. And I want to establish a training program for mechanics from underserved communities, focusing on the diagnostic techniques my grandfather taught me. Voss smiled. I think we can work with that. As they exited the vehicle, Tamika glanced back at the Precision Motors building, where Kensington's world was unraveling. The impossible engine had been fixed in seconds, and in doing so, had fixed something much larger. 3 months later, Tamika stood in the center of Rising Star Mechanics, barely recognizing the space she'd fought so hard to save. Gone was the leaking roof and outdated equipment. In their place stood a state-of-the-art facility that maintained its neighborhood charm while incorporating cutting-edge technology. The partnership with Horizon Automotive Group had transformed more than just her shop. Precision Motors stock had fallen 32% after the NHTSA launched a formal investigation into Lennox Kensington's testing program. The resulting scandal had forced his resignation, with the board appointing Dr. Reeves as interim CEO to rebuild the company's reputation. Tamika's phone chimed with a calendar alert. First graduation ceremony, 2:00 p.m. She smiled, slipping her grandfather's titanium wrench into the pocket of her new coveralls, still bearing the Rising Star logo, but now with Director of Advanced Diagnostic Training embroidered beneath it. She walked through the expanded facility, passing workstations where mechanics both experienced and novice worked on vehicles ranging from decades-old sedans to the latest electric models. The community rate board still hung prominently by the entrance, maintaining the shop's commitment to accessible service for essential workers and low-income residents. Marco, now her operations manager, intercepted her with a tablet. Latest diagnostic certification scores just came in. Our students averaged 94% compared to the national average of 76%. Not surprising, Tamika replied. They're learning to listen, not just look. The training program, officially named the Solomon Jones Diagnostic Fellowship, had launched with funding from Horizon and unexpected support from Dr. Reeves, who had volunteered as a guest instructor. The first cohort of 12 students, all from underrepresented backgrounds in the automotive industry, were completing their certification today. In the newly constructed classroom addition, chairs had been arranged for the graduation ceremony. Family members were already arriving, many from the same neighborhood where Tamika had grown up. She recognized parents who had once brought their cars to Solomon for repairs, now watching their children follow a similar path with expanded opportunities. Her grandmother, Eloise, sat in the front row, her eyes bright with unshed tears of pride. Beside her was an empty chair reserved for Solomon, present in spirit, if not in body. At the back of the room stood Catherine Voss, who had become both mentor and friend in the months since their first meeting. Their partnership had expanded beyond the original agreement, with Tamika now splitting her time between Rising Star, Horizon's R&D facility, and occasional expert witness appearances in the ongoing Precision Motors investigation. As the ceremony began, Tamika took her place at the podium, the weight of her grandfather's wrench a comforting presence in her pocket. She surveyed the faces before her, 12 students who had mastered not just technical skills, but a philosophy of problem-solving that valued intuition alongside analytics. Today, she began, you're not just receiving certificates. You're inheriting a tradition of listening to what machines are trying to tell us, even when conventional wisdom says it's impossible. She removed the titanium wrench from her pocket, its surface catching the light as she held it up. This tool belonged to my grandfather. Its metal is cool against your palm when you first pick it up, but it warms quickly, becoming an extension of your hand rather than just an object you hold. Tamika tapped it lightly against the podium, and the distinctive ping resonated through the room. That sound, that specific frequency, has guided me through countless impossible problems. But the tool itself isn't magic. It's the willingness to listen differently that makes the difference. As she spoke, the main garage door rolled up, revealing the same McLaren P2, the impossible engine that had changed everything. Beside it stood Dr. Reeves and a team of precision engineers who had enrolled in Tamika's advanced diagnostic course as part of the company's rebuilding process. As the celebration continued, Tamika stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. The sun was setting over the industrial district, casting long shadows across Rising Star's newly painted exterior. The sign above the door still bore her grandfather's original design, now restored and illuminated. Her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from a number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Jones, Lennox Kensington here. I find myself in need of mechanical assistance with my personal vehicle. My usual resources are unavailable. Would your shop accept the business?" Tamika laughed softly to herself. The universe had a poetic sense of justice after all. She typed a simple reply. "Rising Star Mechanics accepts all customers. Our community rates are posted on our website." Slipping the phone back into her pocket, she felt the outline of her grandfather's wrench, the tool that had taught her to listen beyond the obvious, to find solutions where others saw only impossibilities. Behind her, the sounds of celebration continued. Voices of the next generation who would carry these lessons forward, changing an industry that had once tried to exclude them. Tamika looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "We did it, Grandpa," she whispered. "We really did it." When was the last time someone told you something was impossible? What might happen if you decided not to believe them? When was the last time someone told you something was impossible? Have you ever proven the doubters wrong with your hidden skills? We'd love to hear your story. If you enjoyed this tale of triumph against the odds, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Beat Stories for more inspiring narratives that celebrate underdogs rising above challenges. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our newest stories of people breaking barriers and defying expectations.
This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of what happens when truth meets visibility. At Beat Stories, we believe exposure is the first step to transformation. Subscribe and stay tuned, because the next story might be yours.